because you're talking about the whole idea of not necessarily Photoshop back in those days, but the idea that they can doctor old photographs with new situations to kind of perpetuate the whole idea of an imposter being replaced, replacing a target and doing modern things, right?
Right. Well, ever since photography was developed, since its very earliest days, people have been doctoring photos. Photoshop, all of those terms and tools, those are actual real tools that people used in dark rooms, like eyedropper tool and all that stuff, and they just digitalized it all. But people could do that in real life. And so, back in the Soviet days, the editors erased somebody from one of the pictures with Stalin because I forget his name, but it's in the book. He was assassinated later, or he was executed later. I'm sorry, he was KGB leader who was executed, and they just erased him from a picture with Stalin. So all this stuff can be done. There's a picture of Paul McCartney that we came across. It was on a Beatles book monthly, which was their official fan magazine, and one of the researchers discovered that the picture of Paul McCartney from April 1967 was a picture of Paul from 1966 that they had just airbrushed a mustache onto.
Very interesting.
Oh, that's convincing. Oh, it's a terrible job. It's just the whole Paul McCartney stuff. The work is so poorly done. It's kind of a joke. These people were either inept or just not serious about it, or not really sure.
Yeah.
But you don't see the sloppy work in real intelligence work.
Right.
It's really, really sloppy. So of course, you find out. That's the reason that we're talking about him. That just goes to show how poor their work was, because really nobody should have caught on to double if it had been well executed.
Yeah. Well, let's do this at this point, because now I think we've set the stage for what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the show. But let's tell the story. If you were going to tell someone from the very beginning what happened to the Beatles when they came to America, what was it, 1964? They first made their big debut here in the United States.
Yes.
And
February
then,
64.
Okay, let's go through that story historically, and then come up to the point where you believe that Paul McCartney was replaced, and let's tell that for the viewers.
Well, okay. Of course, everybody knows that there was Beatlemania, and they were very popular, and they toured. They went on 64, 65, 66. 66 was not a good tour, and I talk about that in the book. It's one of the chapters. They were really making waves as far as becoming too political and outspoken, speaking out against Vietnam. Paul was interested in the JFK assassination, didn't believe the official story, and was threatening to write the score for Mark Lane's Rush to Judgment. They were against segregation, and they were just starting to become a problem, I think, for the powers that be, because they were too powerful and influential.
Yeah, and I don't know that the millennials or the young people know how influential the Beatles really were. Here were a bunch of young guys in their 20s at the time, right? Coming to America in 1964, and basically they had the red carpet rolled out for them, and they had quite a wit. All of them were very outspoken. And you can imagine what the powers that be here in the United States or even around the world were thinking if these young if these young guys are out there, saying something that they don't want them to say, how concerned they might be.
Oh, yeah, right. I mean, there was one writer, Salvador, I forgot his last name, sorry, it's in the book, but he said that John Lennon was more influential than any world leader.
Yeah.
The Beatles were more influential than basically anybody. So if they're going to start coming out questioning the Vietnam War, telling people if they don't want to fight, they shouldn't have to, and war is wrong, and I mean, this is going to start to raise concerns, especially with, like COINTELPRO, who was tasked with neutralizing anybody who was against the war. I mean, they were targeting AIM, the American Indian Movement, the National Lawyers Guild, and even Albert Einstein. So, yeah, when the Beatles come out in their press conferences.
The National Lawyers Guild? Whoa, what was that?
Oh, I don't know. Apparently it was something back then. I guess it's not around anymore. Maybe it's the bar, the American Bar Association now. But
sounds very radical.
Yeah.
Oh, that's stuff.
But,
okay, so
yeah, I mean. Mm-hmm.
So let's keep going down the story here. They come to America in 1964. Where did they first perform big time here when they got off the? Wasn't it a Pan Am jet? I remember them being photographed coming off the tarmac.
Yeah, it was New York, and they played on the Ed Sullivan Show on February 9th, 1964. And the funny thing is that, and this is one of the stories in my book, but Paul was talking about the first performance on Ed Sullivan and remembering that they played yesterday and he was waiting in the wings, like behind the curtain, and some stagehand was talking to him, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like a complete BS story because, first of all, yesterday was not even written yet.
Oh, my goodness.
They released it. Yeah, they released it in '65. I think they played it on their fourth appearance on Ed Sullivan.
Uh-huh.
And Paul was never behind the curtain when that song, they finished one song, George introduced him to play yesterday, and he stayed on stage and switched out his bass for a guitar.
Got it.
He was never behind any curtain. It's a complete BS story.
Yeah.
Any way you look at it, whether, maybe he was confused talking about the yesterday performance. It's no, that didn't even happen with the yesterday performance. So
yeah,
it was kind of, I went through a lot of his statements and caught him out in a lot of lies.
So in other words, what you're saying, you mentioned the term fall, F-A-U-L.
Fall, yes, that's fake Paul.
The fake Paul is what you're talking about. Talking about the old appearance on the Sullivan Show in 1964 and trying to tell people what really happened when he got it all wrong is what you're saying.
Right, because he wasn't there.
Yep.
And he doesn't really put much effort into getting the story right. It's
yeah.
almost insulting. He doesn't think enough of the audience to even try to pretend to be left-handed or any of that stuff.
Very, very significant because Paul McCartney played the bass left-handed.
Right. Paul was left-handed. He did everything left-handed. And Saul just uses his right hand. I mean, the only thing he does really is he does pretend to play left-handed. But
sure.
In almost every other circumstance, he seems to be right-hand dominant.
Yeah.
And I go through that in the book, too, and say, in this interview, he was, catching a bouquet with his right hand, or, just all this stuff he's doing. If you were really left-handed, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe you can smoke with your either hand, because smoking doesn't require a lot of skill. But other things,
right. Yeah, like catching a bouquet, you'd naturally catch it with your dominant hand, for sure. Now, let's get back to the story. So Ed Sullivan's show was the first performance, and then go through basically what happened then, and when you think he was actually replaced, or what the heck happened at that moment.
Well, I think that he was actually replaced on the 66 tour towards the end. Like August 25th, 1966, they played Seattle. That is the last confirmed documented sighting of Paul McCartney as far as I'm concerned. And an interesting thing that happened is that there was a photographer named Wally Funk who was up here in the Northwest, and he went to the Seattle show, and he took photographs, even though he wasn't supposed to. He took a bunch of photographs. And these photographs have been pawned off as being from the San Francisco show on August 29th. August 29th. So these pictures are basically giving the illusion that it was still Paul in San Francisco, when I don't think it was anymore.
So, in other words, was he a part of that cover-up, the photographer, or was he?
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't part of the cover-up. His pictures have been pawned off as being from San Francisco.
Got it. Yeah.
It's just, people will say they're from San Francisco when they're actually from Seattle.
Now,
and I talk about that too.
Well, let's just hone in here now. You've got August 25th, 1966, the Beatles are playing in Seattle, Washington. They're staying at the Edgewater Hotel down there.
Yeah, Edgewater Hotel, right. And, there's that Arctic building downtown that has all of the walruses on it.
Oh, tell us the significance of that in your mind.
I think that I Am the Walrus is a clue. I think it's a clue that Seattle is where it went down.
My
and also
goodness.
in the movie, and also the movie Sleepless in Seattle has a very awkward Paul is dead scene.
Does it really?
Tom Hanks. Yes, Tom Hanks goes in, talks to his kid Jonah, and says, and the little kid has his girlfriend there or whatever, and it's like, "Oh, Dad, did you know if you play this record backwards, it says Paul is dead?" And it's like, why was that scene even in there? Why was it necessary? But I think it was in there for a reason, and to tell people Seattle is connected to Paul is dead.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
Can you kind of give us some details of why you think it happened in Seattle and how maybe it went down?
Well, Michael, you were asking me before the interview started about the channeling.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm going to tell you that I have channeled a lot of my information.
But you also follow up? You also use it just as a tip and then follow up to find out corroborative evidence, right?
Right. I channel because I really had no idea what happened in the beginning.
Okay.
So I was trying to get the information, but I was able to corroborate it because I'm not going to just put that out there. I mean, it's going to be backed up with evidence, with facts, as much as possible because, there's no victim report. You can't go get a police report on what happened. They're not giving you anything except the clues and the backmasking, the reverse speech, because there is a difference.
Oh.
And there's astrology, and there's Bible code. So there are different things, different tools you can use to try to suss out what happened. So I get this information by channeling. Seattle is where it went down, that Paul was murdered. He was assassinated for being too political, basically, and uncontrollable. He was not a pawn. He was too powerful and influential and too talented to be like a one-hit wonder. He was nobody's tool. So he's pretty dangerous for the powers that be. So they take him out and they replace him with an Illuminati New World Order puppet, a shill. This guy still shills